Hey, what's going on everybody? Justin here, and in this video I want to share 10 book recommendations that I think you might enjoy, particularly if you're participating in the Big Book Summer 2024 Reading Challenge. This is a reading event created by Sue Jackson, and I'll leave her link down below, and I put a announcement video of my participation in it, where it's all about reading 400 plus page books during the summer months and whatnot. But anyways, I got 5 nature books and 5 history books. It actually took me quite a bit of finessing to try to find enough nature books here, because a lot of them just kind of trail off in the 300s range for kind of the longer ones. There's just not tons of really, bricks for nature reads. But let's just go ahead and get started. So first up, we got The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, A New History of a Lost World by Stephen Broussat. This is just a fantastic book. This is the go-to book if you want to learn about contemporary research and understanding on dinosaurs. He also has a kind of a companion book called Rise and Reign of the Mammals. If mammals are more of your thing, and it kind of traces the evolutionary history of the mammal lineage. But this is literally everything you want to know about dinosaurs. What is, different things like coloration, feathers, all that kind of stuff, different dinosaur behaviors. What have we actually learned? I think it was published in the late 2000 teens, I want to say. So it is 2018, so it is really up to date. I haven't met a single person that has read it and talked about it that has not liked it, so that's definitely a great thing. Plus it's got a great cover. Like I said, I think you'll enjoy it if you enjoy dinosaurs. And I got one more dinosaur book and then 3 ocean books. I'm not quite sure why it panned out quite like that, but we got The Dinosaur Artist, Obsession, Betrayal, and the Quest for Earth's Ultimate Trophy by Paige Williams. This is all about, if you like more kind of the paleontology aspect, digging up the bones and everything like that. This is all about a master forger who was also just kind of a regular fossil collector and everything, but also forged dinosaur bones and almost created a full-size T-Rexes and stuff. And almost sold them at auction and everything. And this is just a really kind of good work of investigative journaling, kind of biographing the forger, and kind of all the different connections he had, how this even kind of went down, what possess someone to try something like this, but also kind of getting to the bottom of these are actually forged bones and everything like that. But also kind of deals a lot too with how is it, prominence, who owns different fossils and bones and things. Is it the person uncovering it? Is it the agency or the college or institution or whatever that you're working for? Is it the country that they're in? Different things like that, and kind of the legal wrangling that different countries have finally kind of sort of hammered out to address some of these issues and everything. But yeah, just it's a true, if you like true crime and dinosaurs or bones or whatever, I think you'll enjoy this one. It's just a really good blend of a bunch of different topics there. Now moving on to some ocean stuff, we got War of the Whales, A True Story by Joshua Horwitz. And this is all about a group of people, a couple different people that kind of work together to try to fight the U.S. Navy and the U.S. government, where a bunch of whales were becoming beached in different parts of the tropical waters in the Caribbean, things like that. And it was pretty much discovered that the Navy was doing all these kind of weird sound tests and explosions and everything like that. And kind of how a bunch of different government organizations just kind of rubber stamp anything that the Navy wanted to have done, even though they're supposed to, address, kind of biological concerns that might go on with different tests and everything. But it kind of deals a little bit with the legal stuff, a lot of the science, everything about whales, why they're getting beached, kind of their different biology anatomy as well. So it's kind of another good blend of a bunch of different things. But does show a couple different organizations that really are trying to address some of these concerns and actually getting a little bit accomplished in that way. Although obviously fighting the U.S. government on a lot of stuff like that. It's just, it's a Sisyphean effort per se, but definitely check this out if that sounds like something you'd be interested in. Next up is one of my favorite ocean books, and as you can tell, I brought it with, I don't actually know where I brought it with me, but it's it's all dirty and just banged up and stuff from being in my backpack. I must have taken it on one of my camping trips or something. We've got The Sound of the Seas, Seashells, and the Fate of the Oceans by Cynthia Barnett. And this is just, first of all, when I first saw it in a bookstore, it was just the cover I just thought was super wonderful. But this is all about kind of ocean acidification, kind of just how the ocean is changing over time, because the reason, you know, the planet hasn't warmed up quite as much as it has is because the ocean absorbs a lot of the CO2 and everything, and I think it's become 30% more acidic than 200 years ago. But anyways, what that causes for a problem is it makes it really difficult for a lot of sea animals, particular ones with shells, you know, different mollusks, clams, things like that, anything with a shell, to kind of reform and rebuild its shell if it becomes damaged. It just takes a lot more energy to create it in the first place. Just creates a whole litany of problems and everything. But this book kind of deals with like kind of the whole history of seashells. Seashell collecting I didn't realize quite how big of a ordeal that used to be. That was a huge hobby thing, almost like the insectomania thing where people are collecting butterflies and beetles and stuff in Britain for a while. But yeah, seashells were just a really huge hobby. But it was just kind of fun learning about how like some of them are like, you know, there's collectors that spend zillions of dollars. How some creatures are kind of becoming endangered and threatened stuff just because collectors keep like, you know, pulling them out and stuff, and you have to kind of kill the you know, the mollusk living inside to like, you know, keep the shell and prepare it and everything. So you're kind of dealing a little bit with conservation and everything like that as well. So yeah, it was just really interesting, a whole bunch of different facets of things kind of revolving peripherally to shells and the animals that live in them and everything. Just really fun. I really enjoyed it. It's definitely one of my favorite kind of like ocean themed works. And then lastly, one of my favorite, he probably is tied for first for my favorite nature author. We got Carl Safina's Song for the Blue Ocean, Encounters along the World's Coast and Beneath the Seas. And this was his first book. I believe it was published in 97 or 98. But he's written a whole host of other books. I think I got 5 or 6, I think there's 8 or 9. I've thoroughly enjoyed every single one of them. But this one is one of his like longer ones. And he kind of breaks up into 3 sections. The first one's dealing sort of with Atlantic tuna fishing, dealing with kind of the wrangling on both sides of the Atlantic on how to, you know, please everybody between consumers, the actual fishermen, the tuna themselves, you know, different things like that. The government agencies that are kind of doing stuff and kind of not doing stuff and this and that, maybe doing too much, too little. Things like that. The second book is dealing with the Northwest, mostly on like salmon fisheries and stuff. And then he also goes into the Pacific as well for different coral reef stuff. Anyways, Carl Safina's like a pretty famous marine conservation and scientist, marine biologist, but he deals a lot with actual dealing with like kind of the boots on the ground with the people that are actually fishing. Like for example, like in this book, there's huge chapters that are just dedicated to him spending time like on the fishing boats with them, just because that's something he actually enjoys, but he also has like a respect for, like, you know, the people actually doing this and wants to make their lives easier and not just making it harder by making it like you can't fish and that stuff. So he's very in tune with like, you know, keeping like jobs available, stuff like that. But he deals a lot too with like kind of legal, like for example on the tuna chapter there's a bunch of tuna international conferences, and he kind of goes into the details on different countries' attitudes and kind of the backstabbing and, you know, backroom kind of wheelings and dealings that go on as well. So you kind of got another mix of different stuff as well, but really beautiful nature writing kind of like thrown throughout. So just really enjoyable. Highly recommend it if you want to read a book kind of like on fisheries. Though it is a little dated probably, it's still a really great work to read. So there you have it. Those are the 5 nature books. Now if you made it this far, you might as well like and comment and all that kind of stuff. Let me know a really good book that's over 400 pages that you would recommend to others to read. Special bonus points if it's a nonfiction. But if you want to support the channel, obviously liking and subscribing is pretty cool. But you can also check out my Etsy shop where I make signs like this and sell them and all that kind of thing. If you just want to like the shop and some items, that definitely helps a ton in the Etsy algorithm, all that kind of stuff. But now let's move on to some history books. So I got 2 American histories, which I think it's just because normally I read only medieval and ancient, and the other 3 are all ancient histories. But this year I've been reading a lot of like American and European history for like whatever or modern European history, and I'm not 100% sure why. But anyways, we got The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt by Edmund Morris. I think this is actually even though it's like one of the smallest ones I picked up, this is actually I think the longest one. Yeah, this is almost like 900 pages if you count actually it is over 900 pages if you count the index and everything. But anyways, Edmund Morris has written a bunch of really famous biographies, but he's got a trilogy on Theodore Roosevelt, and this happens to be the first one. I've read this one and Theodore Rex, and I do have Colonel Roosevelt I need to get to at some point. But yeah, this one won the Pulitzer Prize, and I will say it won it with good reason. Just a tremendous biography. I find Theodore Roosevelt just a really fascinating figure. kind of in like that turn of the century, kind of the Gilded Age and whatnot. Don't read a lot of American history, but I've been trying to do a little bit more. But I will say World War I, and then kind of backwards into like the Gilded Age around like Theodore Roosevelt. I do really enjoy learning about that time period. This one covers from his birth. It's a biography straight up until he becomes president of the United States, where the second book deals with his presidency in depth. So yeah, like I said, if he's a figure that you enjoy, this is definitely like the go-to biography to pick up. Next up is a book I recently read and reviewed. I'll put a link up there for the review and stuff. But it's The Demon of Unrest by Erik Larson, a saga of hubris, heartbreak, and heroism at the dawn of the Civil War. And this is all about the complete lead up towards the artillery bombardment of Fort Sumter outside of Charleston to kind of initiate the Civil War. But tons of primary sources. I've only read one other Erik Larson book, and I've kind of forgotten most of it and stuff. But you know, I've seen stuff like all the time in like libraries and bookstores and whatnot. But just really well written. I do feel like sometimes like you kind of go into the weeds a little bit, but it all makes sense. It all comes to like all the threads sort of come together. He doesn't take the kind of just straight chronological like path that you think like a lot of history books would take. But you kind of get a background on a lot of just really colorful characters that had a hand in sort of the lead up to the kind of, you know, just the catastrophe that was. Like on both sides, just mistakes were made completely between the seceded states and the Union at the time. Just doing a real bang up job, I guess, leading towards it. But anyways, just a really interesting story. And if you're interested in the Civil War, this just covers a great kind of it's just a wealth of like background and contextual information leading up. And then a really detailed account of the actual 2-day bombardment of Fort Sumter and what actually happened there. So now let's go on to the ancient histories and stuff. The only Punic War book that I had or I guess Punic War like tangential kind of book is Carthage Must Be Destroyed: The Rise and Fall of an Ancient Civilization by Richard Mouse. And this is all about Carthage, kind of its history, with a big emphasis on the Punic Wars between them and Rome. But I just really enjoy Carthage. I enjoy Hannibal. I just feel like they get a bad rep in kind of like the literature and stuff. So it is really fun, like when you can actually find different like, you know, books on, you know, kind of more I shouldn't even say obscure cultures. I mean, they have like a whole thing in North Africa and Spain and whatnot. But you will learn a ton about like this really cool, just kind of Phoenician colony. I don't know, just really enjoy the Punic Wars. And this, if you enjoy that kind of topic as well, definitely need to read this book just to kind of get a good background on Carthage itself as well. So yeah, like highly recommended. Plus I think it's been I enjoyed it, and it's been well regarded by a lot of other people as well. Plus it's got a great cover. Did I say cover? I think I did. Didn't make any sense. Anyways, let's go on to The Poison King: The Life and Legend of Mithridates, Rome's Deadliest Enemy by Adrian Mayer. And this is a nice thick biography on one of my favorite characters from Roman. Kind of they fought like he's like the generation before, like kind of like the fall of the Republic. Though he's kind of like right there. He fought Pompey, he fought Lucullus, and he fought Sulla. And not one of the three could really just like, you know, just completely finish him off. It was actually like one of his own people's like uprisings. He just had so much charisma. He always had like a million options. Just for example, he's known as the Poison King because he supposedly created the Mithridatic elixir, which is essentially an antidote to different poisons and stuff, because he would imbibe tons of poisons just like every day, just because he was afraid of like assassination attempts and everything. Therefore, if he was immune to like poisons and venoms, he could, you know, just kind of withstand that assassination attempt. But anyways, every time people would think he was down and out after taking like a big loss against the Romans or whatever, he would always just kind of regroup, re-rally, get a new coalition together, and start kind of, you know, causing trouble against the Romans again. And I just feel like he was kind of like the last big things, like kind of counterweight in the East, that really stood up to Rome. Like people kind of saw like the writing on the wall, but they just couldn't like get their acts together. And this is like this is like the couple of generations before Rome had kind of just conquered, you know, Italy was conquered, going through Spain, had like their North African Empire, Greece and Macedonia had basically fallen, so there wasn't a whole lot left. But like I said, I really feel like, you know, HBO and Stars and stuff, they're missing out. They could definitely make a show on Mithridates the Great, and I think it would do so well. There's just so much drama and intrigue and actual like truth to like all this history that it's just crazy. Definitely check it out if you're kind of like into like the Roman Republican era, especially like kind of like, you know, the fall of the Republic and stuff. Like I said, this is kind of like maybe like the half generation before all that kind of happening. And then lastly, here's another book that I just finished recently, and I'll put the review up there as well. We got Judith Herron's Ravenna, Capital of Empire, Crucible of Europe. Now this one was just really fun. For those who don't know, Ravenna, which is in northern Italy, was pretty much the capital of the Western Roman Empire for a little while. Kind of the last 100 years there, in the 400s and stuff, Rome itself was kind of just doing its steady kind of free fall into like obscurity for a while. But this covers a lot of like the political, military narrative history, as well as tons of cultural stuff as well. And then you have a ton of religious history as well, because that's kind of a big crux, kind of a thorn in everyone's side. Like during this time period, this is when the different sects of Christianity were really starting to kind of go at it. You kind of have the real division between East and West. Catholicism and Orthodoxy were kind of splitting, but even still like other like different like heresies and things that would become heresies are really prevalent as well. But just really profiles a lot of the really kind of key figures that I enjoy. For example, like Stilicho and Aetius are some of my favorite figures from ancient Rome, and like Stilicho and Aetius get a really good kind of I guess coverage in the first like couple of chapters in this book. For those who don't know, like for example, Stilicho and Aetius were kind of the guys, the warlords. They weren't emperors of the West per se, but they really were like the ones holding things together as best they could. You know, a lot of the resources had kind of dwindled by that point, but anytime, like once they started doing fairly well against like, you know, the different Germanic barbarians and against like Attila and stuff, the Roman emperor or his wife in some cases would get the idea, well, we don't want them to be too successful, so they off them, and then you know the West kind of falls like after that. But Stilicho's really interesting too, because he's half barbarian himself. One of his parents was a Vandal. So anyways, you get into all kinds of cool stuff. Like I say, it's a great coverage of political, military, as well as tons of cultural stuff going on. Plus, just like look at that coverage, it's really well done. And then tons of plates in this book, comparatively speaking. You get a lot of like the cool mosaics that Ravenna is known for, and the different architecture and everything. So highly recommend it if you're a fan of kind of like, you know, the fall of the Roman Empire or late antiquity, anything like that. I think you will enjoy that one as well. So there you have it. There are 10 books, over 400 pages. I think would be really fun, really good for people to read for Big Book Summer 2024. Let me know down in the comments below if that's something that you're going to be participating in, and whether you are or not, leave a title that's over 400 pages, especially if it's like, say, bonus points if it's a nature nonfiction, just 'cause I don't have a whole lot of door stoppers that are nature or environmental kind of biology related. But anyways, thank you so much for watching, and whether you're reading a 400-page book or not, always remember, read victoriously.